Hey, this is Dave with Brazos Barbell, and today we're going to talk about the potential advantages and disadvantages of either deadlifting with a slightly rounded upper back versus a neutral, or even going into a little bit of extension of the thoracic spine. So the big deal, what we're going to be talking about here, is going to be that I'm talking about upper back. So a lot of what I'll cover initially is going to be reinforcing some of the bracing mechanics. And we'll talk about the hip position and rib cage position, and then once we have that stabilized, some of what we can do with things above the abdominal brace, leading into the rhomboids and lats and things like that, that may create an advantage with the deadlift. So right off the bat with this, in the case of injury or any of those kind of things, I'm not recommending training through pain or letting any of this be excessive. Where some of these are just going to be creating advantages in the deadlift. Now, if you have discomfort, or if the rounding starts looking like it's getting away from the upper back into the mid back and low back, that's where I wholeheartedly say that you should stop and reassess some of the technique and get stronger. And we'll talk about accessories on how to get stronger, whether you're deadlifting with a neutral back or with this rounded back. We'll cover those kind of things. And then if you're unable to maintain that trunk position throughout the lift, the accessories that'll work well for you too. So we'll cover all of these things. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to look at is going to be the differences in the posture here. So the first thing that I'm doing is as I'm setting up right here, I'm going to be using a neutral spine with this one, and I'm not going to be letting my upper back round. This is just one plate on the bar, so we're not going to be able to see a ton of what's happening. But the first few reps that I do are going to be with the neutral back, or maybe even slightly extended. So the initial setup position is what we're going to be looking at. So again, with the defining what we're trying to get an advantage of, is we'll say that here's my arms connected down to the bar, from my back to the end of my hips. We'll look at the moment, or the distance from the end of my hips to the bar. So that little line right there, that bottom line, is going to be what we're looking at, and where I think the possible advantage is of pulling with the slightly rounded upper back. Now, with this position here, there's going to be the neutral back. Maintaining this posture will make it much easier to lock out. So we'll cover those things later, but we'll just see the first few that I'm doing. This is all the nice neutral back, and then I'll transition to what my actual setup is, and then we'll cover kind of bracing. So now I'm changing into what I'm actually doing, and we'll see even right away that we'll look at most of it happening up in here. My upper back, is I'm letting that position round in order to keep my hips closer to the bar, and we'll do we'll say this isn't going to actually be where it wins up, but hopefully this little line right there is going to be shorter than what the other one was. So we'll go through it again. So as I drop into this and find the bar right in here, hopefully the distance from where my shoulders are to the back of my hips, this line is going to be shorter. And that was going to be the main advantage, and then obviously there's going to be disadvantages. So going through my setup here is going to be, I start with the big brace, and then I reach for the bar by creating length in my upper back. So the most important part with this is, for this to be done well, we have to brace well. So I think the Chris Duffin and the Kabuki Strength Systems, they have a great video, and even just on Instagram, of the open scissors versus closed scissors. And we'll say, I'll redraw these here. So we'll say that's the bottom of my rib cage, and this is the top of my hips, or the top of my pelvis. When I'm getting braced, maintaining those lines like that is going to be a big deal. So everything above this is going to be where my rounding comes from in my thoracic spine. Anything below that needs to stay neutral. This in here needs to stay neutral. I need to keep that relationship. So if your back rounds, you'll get the closed scissors kind of thing. You'll get this right where your lower back ends up rounded, and that's no good. So as long as we can keep those scissors neutral right in here, then that's where we'll be able to create that good brace and maintain it through all of this. So that's rule number one. I'll link the bracing video that I have I'm always talking about the bracing and how that's almost the most critical part with any of the cueing. If you can't brace well, then none of it works around it. The other, I guess, the mistake people would make is the I guess I called the first one closed scissors. So the open scissors would be if people arch too hard, and we get the big belly or whatever, and kind of this the shortened or the extended back. That would be problematic too. What that would end up doing is that it would end up sticking your hips way too far back, and just a weaker position for your back to be in. So where are we going with this? So from this side angle, you actually may not be able to see a ton of what is happening as far as length with the shoulders. So we'll go to this front angle, and what you'll see is that you'll see a kind of a concave chest. So going again, you can see that right here, I'm actually really deliberately letting there be length and being relaxed across my shoulders. I guess in this case, I kind of like the cueing as far as spreading the floor. I'm thinking about creating tension in my legs and pushing the floor outwards this way, and now I have that good brace in my midsection, and I'm just dropping down to the bar, but intentionally letting my arms hang long as I get set here. So from there, legs are tight against the floor, spreading the floor, and here I'll reach for the bar, and I'm creating tension across my shoulders. So one of the cues that I use there, to let the arms drag behind your body, is that your arms are just a rope that's laying across your back, and you don't have any control of that. You can't lengthen the rope. So the best way that you can actually create this tension is by pushing your trunk, pushing your back into that rope, but just letting it drag behind. So I'm trying to push my rhomboids in, but that rope just kind of drags behind me. So that's where all the length is coming from there. So then past that, I just pull my chest up and through, and that kind of goes into that anchoring video that I have earlier. So create that length, chest comes up and through. But the big deal is going to be not retracting the shoulders. I really want the arms to hang long and let them be protracted. So this is creating the thoracic rounding of the upper back that we'll see on some of the heavier sets. And especially my top set, you'll see kind of how it gives, but where I can create some of the advantage. So it's a much, much shorter range of motion from the side here. I'll pause this one and go back. So I can get my hips a little bit closer by creating a little bit of slack across here. So this is longer than it would be otherwise, but what it does is it keeps my hips, this position right here, a little bit closer to the bar. If my back was more neutral, then the distance from where my shoulders are might end up a little bit further back, and it would be slightly harder to leave the floor, and then maybe a little bit easier at lockout. But keeping my hips close to the bar makes the movement a little bit more efficient in that regard. So last warm up here, these are all looking about the same, and then we'll swivel back around to the front angle for the top set so you can kind of see it, and we'll play around with some different angles. So good brace. Right here, again, I'll reiterate it, is that everything I'm doing in here, this process is me feeling my arms long and relax, and me feeling my belt, feeling that pressure in there, and making sure that the angle of my rib cage is the same as the angle of my pelvis. So we'll keep going. Okay, maintain that brace. I never let go of the brace. Feel the long arms, and then chest pull straight through. Okay, so we'll see how all these things play out through the heavier sets. So ensuring the good brace, legs spreading the floor, reach for the bar, and then pull the chest through. And then we'll see on the sets after this. This one actually went pretty well, and I was able to make a good lockout. But particularly on the next set, you'll see where the challenge comes from letting the rounding happen, and I end up having trouble locking it out at the very end. So pretty much the same angle, same intensity. This is going to be 683 for a triple. First rep pretty good. Really all these were pretty solid. I'm pretty happy with the execution here. So legs into the floor, long arms, pulling that chest through, and then this third rep, I have a little bit of trouble with my grip there. Just my hands are getting kind of raw, but at the top, we can see where the struggle really happens. Once I get my knees locked out, I just lose a little bit of leverage over the bar and have trouble locking out. And that would be the advantage of a more neutral back. But going through these, we'll see kind of all of that play out from a different angle. And like I said, it's more neutral probably than it sounds like I'm saying. I'm not letting my back give a whole lot. So really having a strong back is really important. I don't want to see this big rounding. If that's happening, people need to work on their brace a whole lot more, and then work on their upper back strength and cue a whole lot better pulling the chest through. So all those things together will make this actually be an advantage for you. But outside of those things, we can create the advantage by letting the arms hang really long and creating some length down in there. So we'll see how these play out. So I'm always fighting to maintain that brace and not let anything give there. As these get harder, always my third rep gives, but I can keep working my chest through and make those lockouts good. So overall, I'm very pleased with this day. I've been handling a whole lot of volume, and so being able to hit all these prescribed loads was a big win for me here, and really making my lockouts and all of the reps look really, really solid. So I'm pleased with the progress of my deadlift, getting back to kind of the form I was going. So now we're going to 3 sets of 5, and this side angle will be a good one. So we'll kind of address some of the things that I talked about in the very beginning. Is that this position is the ideal position that I think I want to be in. Now, if and it's like I said, we see more of the concave chest from that kind of front angle, but this is what I'm going for. Let me redo that one. So the straight line from my shoulder down to the bar, from my shoulders back to my hips, and then I create this very short moment from my hips to the bar, and that makes this move a whole lot better. If my back was more neutral, if I didn't let my arms hang so long down in here, then this position would end up getting kicked back a whole lot more, and that would be a much longer position to where the bar is. And then the big deal with this too is fighting. I don't necessarily like cueing hips in through the pull through that anchoring video. Most of what I talked about was that all the force, it's legs coming down, chest coming through, and this anchored hip position just basically stays still right there as I pull through everything. So slipped a little bit there, but most of the rounding we'll actually see is coming from my upper back, like I'm saying is the advantage. So I was pretty pleased with these reps. I think this is 290 kilos, so like 640 pounds, and then I have to drop down a little bit more because these were pretty rough for sets of 5. But that was a good example, and this next one will be a good example of what happens where it becomes challenging, and I did a good job of executing this next rep where my position stays really good. Long arms, so we'll address that again, is that my feet are pushing hard in the floor, pulling my arms long, creating that slack or creating the length in my upper back. Oh, wrong way. And chest through, legs down to the floor, and then the length comes there, and my lockout's challenging, but patience makes it happen. So 2 more sets. There may actually just be 1 more set on this video. But the biggest cue is relaxing the arms, and then it's legs and chest after that. But if you don't brace, I had to reset my grip there, so it's still the same set for my straps. If you don't brace well, then none of this will work, and then you'll end up just with a really rounded back, and then potential for injury, and then you'll miss probably all of your deadlifts around your knees, and the hard ones I don't think you'll stand a chance at locking out. So the big difference that we can create here is going to be that we start with a higher hip position, higher shoulder position. What I mean by higher hip position is that in this position here, my hips relative to the bar, I'd say this is the top of my hips where the barbell's here. I want this to be a high position while maintaining a relatively upright torso. And that just is less distance that the bar has to move. We'd even say we want as much of an angle with my knee as possible. I always tell people if they're getting too squatty, I'll draw on the other leg. If I see this looking pretty close to a right angle, that's a mistake, and it takes way too much effort to get that bar moving off the floor. So keeping the hips as high as possible or that knee angle as open as possible is one of the advantages that the creating length in your shoulders can do for you. So we'll look at some accessories after this. Really the 2 main ones that I think will benefit this is going to be the Romanian deadlifts and the bent over rows. So I used to do a whole lot more of these, and actually in my programming haven't done a ton of them recently. I've moved to more like belt squats for quad strength and things that are a little bit lower impact. But with me not playing or competing until Raw Nationals, I've decided to add back in some of these exercises that really have a high training load. They're hard to do on a weekly basis and really maintain good output on other lifts, but I'm willing to make that trade-off. So how I'm going to be executing these, I did 3 sets of 8, and I worked up to 210, so it was 460 pounds for a set of 8. Each set I increased the load a little bit. So the biggest deal here is that people need to learn how to hinge well. So in this position, my shoulders are staying still. Through the whole movement, my shoulders really move in a straight line, and it's all just hips back and forth. What I always tell people is that it looks like there's oops, we'll do the other one. That the shoulders are taking this long kind of path back and forth here. That's going to be a problem, and I want the hips to be moving back and forth in this direction. That should be where we see most of the effort happening. Really, it's shoulders going up and down here, hips moving back and forth. Now, I think there's 2 ways to execute the Romanian deadlifts to be effective, and the way that I'm doing them, I think is going to be more challenging on my back than it is going to be challenging on my hamstrings. There's still a big effort on my hamstrings, but I think my knees are getting a little bit soft. We'd say in this position, if my knees were a little bit straighter, instead of having this angle here, if it was closer, well, that was a bad one, but if it was closer to straight, I would get a lot more load in my hamstrings. Now, what I'm trying to do here is challenge the load pretty much all in my lower to upper back, and primarily upper back and hamstrings. So I'm using the cues that I've been using through the rest of the deadlift, is I'm letting my arms hang long. I'm not putting them in a stronger position where I'm retracting them a little bit more. I'm trying to make this a little uncomfortable, but I'm maintaining a good brace, and I'm training that long arm position. If that's not something that we train, then if we're always training with our shoulders retracted and in the maybe the stronger position, the more comfortable position, then when we actually go to take max loads, it's just not going to be something that moves really well. So I worked up to a pretty near maximal set on this next set of 8, and I was really happy with these. I've only been back doing these for 3 weeks now, and I'm really happy with the progress. So like I said, it's 210, like 460, and I'm really challenging getting my hips back as far as I can, maintaining as close to a straight leg as I can, getting close to the floor. But most of the effort I feel here is actually in my upper back because I'm letting my arms hang so long. So after this set, I do bent over rows, and it's going to be the same deal. Is that I use a little bit of English on them, get maybe a little bit of body into them, but the big emphasis that I'm using is that I want my bottom position to have that lengthened arm, the shoulders being protracted, and then so I can use a little bit more weight. I feel like I'm terrible at these. This is like 265 on the bar, and this I did 3 sets of 10, and they were pretty maximal. But training that hinge position and the long arms is going to be pretty vital for making the rest of these work. So thanks a lot for watching. If you found this video helpful, then subscribe to the channel and give me a thumbs up. I always like the comments, and leave me suggestions as far as what you want me to make videos on, and I'll do my best to keep answering those questions. So see you next time.